In the name of the one who breathes, the one who is breath, and the one who is breathed upon. Be seated. Today we actually get two versions of Pentecost. The story of John, which we have been reading over the last few weeks, is a story of a group of disciples terrified. They have come in with Jesus hoping for the transformation of Israel, the freedom and the liberation of Israel from the tyranny of Rome. And their leader dies, a criminal, executed by that very government. They go into hiding. Their friend rises again, giving them hope and joy. And then 40 days later, he leaves them. It's a story of fear and terror and hiding in a room. Friends, when it says that the disciples were gathered in a room and the door is locked, it's because they are afraid. They are afraid that if they go out and wander the streets, they will be named and identified and arrested. They are afraid. And in the way of John's time, which is a little bit fluid and flexible, Jesus keeps showing up to them. Jesus shows up to them over and over again to remind them, I am the one who was crucified. I am the one who walked with you and talked with you and ate with you and slept with you and who died. And just so you know, touch my hands, touch my side. And they're still in that room. And they are afraid. And Jesus comes one last time in the Gospel of John, and he breathes on them. Friend, the breath of God is the breath of creation. John, over and over and over again, brings us back to the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, which is a reference to in the beginning of creation. When nothing existed except the Creator who breathes her Spirit on the world, and the world comes into being. From the planet that we know to the planets that we will never know and can barely even see. The breath of God breathes creation into existence, and the breath of God fills each and every human being. That's the story of the creation of humanity. God breathes into this mud creature, what Phyllis Tribble translates as an earthling. That's actually what the Hebrew says, mud creature, earthling. A creature of dirt and rock and dust into which the breath of God brings life. And that breath of God does not bring life once at the beginning of creation or once at the beginning of human creation. The breath of God fills the world. The breath of God breathes through all things, and sometimes we need to be reminded of that breath. Because we forget and we are afraid. Fear is absolutely a part of our culture. It's always been a part of our culture. Fear has been used to create systems that lift up some and put down others, and Christianity has walked hand in hand with that for far too much of its history, not just in this country, but from very early on. Fear is, at least in the Gospel of Mark, the opposite of faith. Not faithlessness, but fear. Fear that keeps us in closed rooms and behind locked doors. Because we are afraid of the world and the creation that God has made. And sometimes, friends, that fear is warranted. To live as the people of God in creation is to live as God has created us to be a people who care for everybody, and especially those that are vulnerable. And in our world, calling out for mercy to the vulnerable gets you mocked in the media. It gets you raked across the coals, and yet that is the core of the gospel. To be a people who cry for the mercy of all, for justice for all, for caring for those who are within our community and without our community. That is the work of the Spirit, and that's actually the story we hear of the Spirit in the gospel, in the book of Acts. That moment when the Spirit comes, the disciples have finally gotten out of the room. All of Jesus' followers are finally bold enough, unafraid enough, trusting enough in the God who has been with them that they are willing to unlock the door and to step outside and to begin to speak the story that the Spirit of God is for everybody. This is the promise of the prophet Joel. The Spirit of God will come down upon the old and the young, men and women. The Spirit of God flows where it will, and where it wills to flow is in and through a people who care for and love one another. It's not a perfect community. We know that. We know that it is a community that comes together to worship, to hold things in common, and we also know that they fail to hold some things in common. By failing to feed everybody that's in their midst, they practice a little bit of discrimination against the Greeks at the time, and that's where we get the office of the deacons. That special office that calls people to say, hey, we're not being faithful to the promises that we have made, and so we need to care for everybody in our midst, and then they figure out how to get it done. It is the breath of God that descends upon this community and allows people to hear the gospel in each of their own languages. We don't know if, because the text is ambiguous, we don't know if it's because the disciples were suddenly gifted with speaking in lots of different languages, or if people heard in their own language. There was some spirit breathy translator, like in Star Trek where they hold it up, and it comes out. That might have been a dated reference. Okay. But the ability to hear God in each and every language, in each and every tongue. And I think that's more than just our language. It's more than just a technical translation. It's being able to hear God in the place and the culture that you are a part of. I don't know if you're aware, but our bishop has been traveling in Kenya and South Sudan, and they've been sharing videos online, and they are with Anglicans, people who have been Anglicans for as long as we have in this country, and their worship is nothing like ours. There's a form, right? It follows our form, but the dancing and the language and the rhythms shift and change. I have been in conversation with Father Paul, who is the priest at All Saints Goshen, which is the Kenyan congregation here in Tacoma. Did you know that we have a Kenyan Anglican congregation here in Tacoma? I see some eyebrows going up. No. And I've been watching a little bit of their worship online, and they sing and they dance, and their rhythms are different, and the energy is different, and the way that they talk about God is different, and it's beautiful. I do not know Kikuyu, so I do not understand most of their Kenyan service at all. I can guess parts of it because the patterns look like our patterns do in some ways, with a lot more movement. God shows up in each and every place, and in each and every language, and in each and every culture, and in each and every body differently. We have our way of gathering as a community. of celebrating the spirit of breathing together through music. I had the joy of preaching yesterday at Bill Giddings' funeral, a longtime music lover. And the choir was glorious. We had our choir and some supplements from the Compline choir at St. Mark's because Bill was there for over 50 years. And the music was beautiful, and the opportunity to sing and breathe together and allow our bodies to resonate with the breath of the Spirit together. That is a gift, and it is a gift of this place. It's one of the ways in which we gather so that we can breathe together the Spirit of God and go out and breathe that Spirit on the world around us. Friends, the Spirit of God does not come to keep us in a locked room. The Spirit of God does not come so that we can just do our thing together. The Spirit of God comes so that we become the breath of God in the world around us, breathing the grace, the mercy, the love, the justice of God in the world around us. Jesus says that whatever sins you forgive will be forgiven you. And actually here the translation is dubious. The second part of that verse does not say in the Greek, and those sins that are held. Rather, it simply says, those that must be held will be held. Sandra Schneider's, a Johannine scholar, actually argues that what's really being said is that, yes, the sins that a community, and if you're Catholic, this isn't about your power as a priest. It is the sins of a community. When we forgive sins, those sins will be forgiven by God because God is honoring the breath of mercy and grace that we speak on those around us, and those who continue to sin are to be held. Those we hold will be loved by God. Friends, God has given us a lot of power. More than I am frankly comfortable with, because the church has not breathed well on people. But that is our calling. Our calling is to breathe the mercy and the love and the compassion and the justice of God, each according to their gifts, in whatever way God has created you to do that, and whatever way God has created us to do that. To breathe the welcome of God within us and to all of those around us. The Spirit of God is breathed on a community so that we can become the community of God. My question for all of us to consider is, what does our community look like? What has it looked like? What does it look like now? And what does it need to look like? Because communities change. The Spirit breathes in us and calls us to be a people who responds to the world that we have now. How is God breathing in you and through you? And how is God breathing in us and through us? What is the gospel that we will preach? I know that as Episcopalians, we don't like that. But it is our call. And we can do it, as Francis is attributed to say, preach the gospel and sometimes use words. That's fine. But we are called to be the breath of God in the world because it is the Spirit that has been given to us so that we can do what the Spirit does. To bring together a community that grants forgiveness and holds those who cannot stop in their sin. to be a community of grace, of kindness, and of boldness, where we too can preach the gospel in whatever language and in whatever gift we have been given, so that the world can see and know the mercy of God. Amen.